When legendary mangaka Eiichiro Oda created the most successful manga of all time, One Piece, he made sure to create an extremely vibrant world filled with incredibly unique landscapes, characters, and abilities that wouldn't be able to be replicated in live action. He said in an interview once that there was no point in drawing manga that could be remade in live action when he first started out, and that sentiment was certainly true for that time. Back in the late 90s, it would simply be unfeasible to properly adapt the adventures of a straw hat wearing rubber man slinging his arms around at oddly shaped pirates in the open sea in a manner that would do the source material justice. However, over time, it seems like Oda has changed his stance on live-action anime, specifically pertaining to his beloved One Piece. Thank you for your service, Shaolin Soccer. Over 2 decades later, Oda decided to work with Netflix to bring his creation to literal life through real people and sets that could properly portray the wacky world he had spent so many years creating. With a rumored $17 million budget per episode, which is at least 3 Big Macs in today's economy, One Piece's live-action set sail to fight against the preconceived notion that live-action anime adaptations are straight-up cheeks. It seemed like everyone, from Oda to Shueisha to Netflix, was intent on doing One Piece as much justice as they could, and after an extremely hyped up campaign, One Piece's live action is finally out. Did they succeed? Did they make a product that has the soul of One Piece in it and properly conveys the themes that Oda has been pushing with his masterful manga? Yes. Yes, they did. And although it isn't perfect, it sure is awesome seeing One Piece brought to life like this. And for any fan of One Piece, I think this live action is a must watch. Before I delve into the specifics of the live action, I want to say that I'm not going to spend this video doing one-to-one comparisons with One Piece's live action and the anime/manga. There's way too many factors at play here to even dream about fully adapting each and every panel into this 8-hour season of live action. After all, One Piece's live action covers up to Logtown, which in total is up to 100 chapters of content. It would simply be unreasonable to expect 8 hours to cover 100 chapters, and plus, there's a lot of rough stretches in the first 100 chapters of One Piece. As a whole, it really isn't that fantastic, especially compared to the absolute greatness we get in later arcs. Although this pacing might sound disastrous on a surface level, through some clever story changes, One Piece's live action still manages to tell the core stories of these arcs in a meaningful manner, which is what matters the most. Also, I'll try not to spoil exact details about what happens in the live action, although given that you're watching this, you probably know what happens in the beginning of One Piece anyways. I mean, it's been 20 years already. With that out of the way, let's talk about what One Piece's live action does well and how it manages to tell such a unique story in a wacky environment with characters that may have seemed too anime to translate into live action. This all starts with the casting of the characters in One Piece's live action. They're good. Like, really, really good. To the point where I'll probably make another video gushing about how good the casting is. I'll start with our favorite crackhead of the seas, Monkey D. Luffy, who is played by Iñaki Godoy. I thought it would be impossible to bring a character like Luffy into live action without him seeming like an annoying moron that commits war crimes for the sake of steak while going against every single notion of common sense presented to him by his crewmates. But he's really likable here. Godoy does a great job showing Luffy's mannerisms, from his aloof look to his lovable grin. Although some of his lines that are taken from the source material do seem goofy when said out loud like this, they still hit, and it's thanks to this amazing casting that the show is as enjoyable as it is. After all, if they didn't nail the main character of One Piece, the heart of One Piece, then you might as well kiss the other aspects of the live action goodbye. One Piece's live action did an equally good job with the rest of the Straw Hat Pirates, especially when it comes to their inter-crew chemistry. The bickering between Zoro and Nami was perfectly translated into live action, whether it be them trying to figure out why the hell Luffy does what he does, to them talking about their tragic pasts in a drinking game on the Baratier. Despite not really knowing each other for that long in terms of runtime in the live action itself, you can still see how Zoro became more trusting of his other crewmates and how Nami had been hiding her own dark secret up until the Arlong Park episodes. Usopp is way less annoying in the live action, which again I'll probably talk about in another video. I just wanted to say that even though the live action's pacing did cut out some of the moments from the manga, the fact that it takes a lot less time introducing the Straw Hats and showing us their backstories makes the Straw Hats themselves a lot more tolerable, and this is the most noticeable with Usopp, as we don't have to be tortured by his annoying ass lying in Syrup Village for hours on end before we get a reason to actually like him and understand him. Plus, Usopp established that he got game within the span of 2 episodes. The live action did an especially good job with the dynamic between Sanji and Zeph, from the stranded backstories to their tearful farewell. I feared that Zeph would get shafted due to the pacing, but the live action definitely took its time showing what kind of man Zeph is. Even after Luffy had left Baratier with his new cook, it's changes like these that really make me appreciate the live action. Speaking of changes, there were a few made to the story of One Piece itself for the live action due to the constricted time frame, with some being good while others are questionable at best. In terms of good changes, I really like how Kobe's getting a lot more screen time, like significantly more screen time, and because Morgan Davies does a phenomenal job portraying him, we get a better glimpse into Kobe's character earlier on in the story, from his days as being Alvida's little bitch to being Garp's new candidate for the next generations of what Marines are supposed to be. But for Garp, there were changes made to him too, some that I really don't like as much. He's the primary Marine figure that's chasing after Luffy between all of these islands, tracking him down all the way to Baratier, and I don't know how to describe it, but he doesn't really feel like Garp. Instead of being a goofy grandpa with immense strength scolding his grandson, live action Garp seems a lot more manic and doesn't really have that cool aura that manga Garp does. But I guess that's just to show how much Garp cares for Luffy and how he's hard on him sometimes. In the manga, that's usually through beating the absolute shit out of wee lad Luffy, but I guess in live action, physical abuse wouldn't really be counted as a gag. It wouldn't be fun to see at all. The whole counting on Mihawk to track down and bring in Luffy was a little weird for Garp as well. I just feel like he wouldn't really do something like that. Speaking of Mihawk, they absolutely nailed his introduction. I just have one question. Why is bro spawn camping bums out of the Grand Line? Is he really that bored? Shanks losing an arm must have done a number on his mental. The antagonists in general in the live action are done superb justice, and you can really see that the actors portraying them are going all out, especially Buggy. He actually seemed scary for a bit when he was first introduced, and his actor, Jeff Ward, does a great job bringing to life his clowny antics. It also helps that clowns are way scarier in real life compared to when they're drawn, and live action Buggy certainly is that. Don't get it twisted though, this dude's head is still kept in some random sack, and he's most definitely still the bum Buggy that we all know and love. But characters just being casted well wouldn't be enough to do justice to One Piece. After all, Oda's world is famous for being extremely expansive, filled with different islands with different cultures that are all going through different struggles. This vibrant world is the main selling point of One Piece, and bringing it to life would prove to be a big hurdle for anyone adapting it, whether it be live action or not. Thankfully, this is where we can see One Piece's live action budget being put to good use because, my lord, the set designs in the live action are really cool. Every single setting has a boatload of love put into it, and the different sets capture the scale of One Piece really well. Logtown felt huge, with a bunch of pirates scurrying off after Roger declared the new era of piracy. Captain Morgan's base felt like a real marine base and had tons of detail, from the interior of the base to the mural of Captain Morgan in the courtyard. Windmill Village had that feeling of nostalgia with Shanks and young Luffy. Buggy's ship felt like a terrifying circus, with all the captured hostages clapping as if their life depended on it. All the different settings in these arcs of One Piece were done justice and more, but my favorite one of them all has got to be the Baratier. The Baratier really felt like this top class but quirky restaurant that you could imagine people from all over the world make journeys for, and it really fit Sanji, from the fancy dining area to the kitchen itself. I'm glad I got to see so many parties interact with each other here, from Arlong threatening everyone to Garp chatting with Zeph about the good old days. Now, to address the elephant in the room and talk about the aspect of One Piece that gets the blood pumping, the fights. I'm not going to sit here and say that the action choreography of live action One Piece is John Wick level or something, but I will say that it is a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. Luffy's rubber abilities don't look nearly as ridiculous as I thought they would. I mean, like, duh, stretching arms in live action obviously looks weird, but it isn't horrific CGI that would make you gag. Zoro's sword skills were put on display multiple times, with my favorite being his clash with Mihawk and how he got low diffed by a butter knife. My favorite action scene so far is actually the one that features the red-haired pirates fighting. The camera work here was pretty neat as the camera swept through the dock, giving a glimpse as to how each of these legendary pirates fight. I really like the ricochet shot from Yasopp here in particular. Overall, One Piece's live action is a really good time. It isn't one-to-one and isn't perfect, but it has what's most important for an adaptation, which is the soul of the source material. It's comforting to know that Oda worked closely with the studio involved to translate his masterpiece into live action to the best of his ability, and his hope of wanting to go against a history of failure when it comes to live action anime adaptations is pretty awe-inspiring. One Piece fan or not, I'd recommend watching the One Piece live action. It's really, really fun. Imagine you're going to the premiere and you just see this dude standing watching you watch One Piece. You'd probably be like, who's this weirdo not sitting down? And then you check Twitter 2 days later and realize that was literally Eiichiro Oda. I'd be gobsmacked.